This is the 237th episode of CloudFocus Weekly for the second week of January 2016. This episode is titled On Our Home Screen. CloudFocus Weekly is brought to you by Arkus, specializing in Salesforce implementations, consulting, and Force.com development. Search for Arkus, A-R-K-U-S, on the App Exchange and read what our clients have to say about us. I'm your host, Jason Atwood, and joining me, co-host, ready to rock and roll on our very special beginning episode, first of 2016, Justin Edelstein.
Hey, do we need to change our opening?
Why?
Is it Force.com development anymore? Is that a thing?
Platform development? I don't know.
App Cloud develop? I don't know what it's called anymore.
Don't care.
That's what the hey.
It's
That's
all about
what it
lightning.
says.
It's lightning development.
That's what it says on the little index card that you read.
Yes, it's actually an index card. That's
So
good.
that's it.
We don't do index cards. So we are back. It's been a couple weeks because we had holidays and vacation and holidays and more vacation. And so we are back for 2016. But we thought we'd kick off. We have a bunch of spring 16 things to talk about next week. So I'll already say that's the piece that we're going to talk about next week because we have, I posted a blog post. You have one coming up next week. So by next week, we'll have at least 2 springs so we can really spring into sprung into spring.
How about just spring into spring?
Spring into spring.
Yeah, I
We
think
do that
that's
next
how
week.
you do it.
And we can feel the power of lightning once again in the release notes. Insert sarcasm. But we actually got this as a reader listening.
How about a listener?
Wow, a listener.
Listener. People don't read blog.
Oh,
wow.
Gotcha.
You know what?
Yeah.
That's your
No.
your fumbling got me there.
So what? I got you anyway.
People
It doesn't
don't
matter.
read podcasts. Unless
Awesome.
they read blog posts.
So what
they
we
listen
thought-
to podcasts.
Yes, someone asked, and I forgot who. Was it Paul?
It might have been Paul Walker.
All right. So it said, hey, as a cool
Paul
idea.
Skywalker.
Hi, Skywalker. Hey, as a cool idea, why don't you guys discuss like what's on your home screens?
Because we're always picking apps.
Right. We're always picking apps, but like what do we put on our home screens? What's important to us? I guess if this were a really big hit episode and we could talk about it, then we'd go back and we could do a
We can do it for the iPad.
or iPad. Well, my home screen on my iPad.
Or your dock.
I would think dock would be the next one. All
My
right.
dock.
All right. So let's go. Let's talk. Let's start. So the idea is
right.
here we're going to hold up our phones.
Yeah.
In
I've
one
got
hand.
mine
In the
right
other
in
hand,
front
we're
of me.
holding our mics because we're doing it from the other studio location with these travel mics, which
Studio 22G.
is 20. Yes. And so we're going to hold up our screens and we're going to kind of go back and forth and talk about what we have on our home screens on our phones.
Yeah.
Like what we put there and why and maybe some reasons. And of course, we won't make many picks. We're not going to make any picks this week because there's no point because we're basically going to be talking about nothing but picks.
Right.
Stuff things. So why don't you go
I'll go first.
first and start by telling me what you like how you arrange
I got a good way to start
theory.
this
Okay,
off. Yeah.
go for it.
So both of us, we should say both of us are holding iPhones.
Yes.
Okay. And we have both had an iPhone since the day that the first iPhone came out.
Yes, because one of us waited in line.
That would be you.
Yeah, and the other one.
And the other one just said, "Yeah, I'll take one.
Sure, I'm at a ball game. I'll meet you there.
I'll
at
meet
midnight.
you
Grab
somewhere
grab-
and I'll pay you. Thank you."
right.
So the first thing that I did and this first thing that I did has remained this way since day one of owning the phone.
Interesting.
I noticed that they put, I think at the time they called it SMS. It is now called Messages.
Yes.
They had it in the top left corner.
Okay.
And phone was in the bottom left corner.
Okay.
And the bottom is kind of the dock, okay? So if you don't have an iPhone, if you have an Android, I don't know, this may be a little different
Thanks
for you.
for
But
downloading.
anyway, if you have it, yeah, exactly. If you have an iPhone, you know what I mean. There's the 4 apps that stay when you scroll through your pages of apps. So I noticed that like right away, I use text messaging and messages way more than I use this thing as a phone.
Oh yeah.
So I immediately flipped messages and phone. So phone lives as its own icon in the top left-hand corner on page 1, home page.
Okay.
And messages lives where phone originally lived, bottom left.
Okay.
Because I figured I use this more if I'm on another page, I still have it there. Phone, I kind of don't use so much with this phone, I don't really need it to be pervasive throughout within the dock of the phone itself. So that's, I guess, my first thing in reasoning. Do you want me to keep going? Do you want me to go through the dock at least and say what's in the dock? All right. So the other 3 apps, as you can fit 4 in the dock, are Mail, Safari, and Overcast.
Ooh, Overcast.
Yeah. So Switch podcast listeners, apps, thanks to your suggestion, because Instacast, I guess, went out of business and would stop supporting it or whatever. So I went to Overcast, which has actually been a very pleasant change.
Right.
It's a nice app, whatever. And I listen to podcasts more than I listen to anything else.
Right.
So that's my main content consumption on this device, more than music, more than anything, is podcasting. And then Mail and Safari just holdover. Like, that's where they came. They came as the 2 middle icons. And I use Mail a ton on the phone, so I figured I'd keep it there. And I just never bothered to move Safari. If I thought about it, there's probably apps that I open more than Safari, but I'm just used to it being there, so I leave it there.
All right. So I say, first of all, I have a couple theories on it. So I've switched. I used to do more foldering on the home screen. Now I basically have 2 screens. I have my home screen and I have the second screen, and that's it. Because now with I don't forget when it was, a couple releases, you can now put as many things in a folder as you need. So to me, it's like, I don't need to have more than 2 screens. I have the first screen, which is nothing but apps. It's basically because the theory is the things that I get to and need the fastest and want to keep in front of me at all times, kind of things that I look at a lot. And then everything else is in a series of folders on the second screen, and super anal, they're alphabetical across the screen. So starting at business in the upper, it goes business, chat, dining, entertainment, files, finance, right? So across my second screen is nothing but folders, and then each folder is basically all the way down to video, which is the last one. That's the first thing. Second thing is, all the apps on the front screen I touch to open because I'm constantly using them, like 20 times a day. There's certain things I use 20 times a day. All apps on the second screen, I never go into these folders. They're just there to have a place to put them. I find them through search. So my navigation to anything on that second screen, I never go into the Office apps folder and look for stuff. Never, ever, ever, ever. The only reason I have them in folders is if I forgot, like, where was the name of that app that could do hotel stuff? Then I know I can go to my second screen, go to travel, and then in it I have tons and tons of travel apps. I'm like, then I'll find it. So it's kind of, and actually this is a lot of the ways I organize things. I organize things sort of, I know search will get me there, but if search fails me, I need to have a path that I can follow that makes sense. Whether I'm organizing Dropbox, Evernote, Google Drive, it's always the same theory. Search is great, but if search fails you, you need to have sort of like a directory system so you can kind of go A, B, C to get there. Okay. So that being said, so everything, and then the most used things are at the bottom of the screen, and then the least used things are at the top. So because I'm constantly, so the last 3 rows are just the things that I use the most, and the first row, like the first non-doc row, is the stuff that I use pretty much all the time. So in my bottom row, I do have phone because I use the phone a lot. Mail, messages, and then Omnifocus. Omnifocus obviously makes it onto my home, makes it onto my bar because it's constant, and it's in what I would say the real estate spot, the boardwalk of your phone, which is lower right-hand corner, right?
So mine's organized slightly differently. It's a little more haphazard, I guess.
Yes. I expect the same.
Yeah, you should expect only that. I mean, I do have the top bar across the top are just apps, and I kind of use the bottom bar as things that I use, not the actual dock, but like
the row,
the lowest row.
Right, row 1 through, let's call it 6.
Sure. So row 6, the bottom one, are things that I would click into. Everything else are essentially things I would use search to get to. I'm a big searcher. I use search quite a bit. I like that on the phone now, when you swipe just all the way to the left, instead of swiping down to search, if you swipe all the way to the left from the homepage, you get like suggestions.
Right.
So I use that a ton because they're kind of like apps I use that I don't really need in my face because I use them a lot. So it's sort of a hidden little navigation.
But you know that that's supposed to be smart.
And it is smart.
So
it's very smart.
It's interestingly smart. I've seen that. So I go to the gym. When I go to the gym, I watch basically Hulu, or I watch an NFL Network. I watch the clips and stuff. So, and I'll go to the gym. I'll swipe on my iPad. All of a sudden, NFL Network will be the only thing, be the first thing in there. So it definitely learns like location and time of day is something. It's got some algorithm there. I'm not saying it's the smartest thing in the world. Right now, it's got Fly Delta. Now, I can't tell if that's because I was in it yesterday looking at it, or if it knows I'm getting on a Delta.
It's because you were in it yesterday looking at it, probably. I mean, for me, if I swipe left right now, it's got WhatsApp because I've been chatting with people. It's got messages. It's got weather because I went and looked at the weather because we're traveling today, and it has Madden Mobile. Because of course, I don't know, it just that actually always seems to
that in my iPad is always the
it's just always there. So
all right, so
it also
go.
is, so again, across the top bar, this is just legacy. It's phone. I've never moved it. I did that one switch like on day one. I've just switched SMS and phone just is my top left corner.
Okay. Well, then let's just do it. Now let's go like more to apps and like what you have up there. So
okay. So
top row one.
Top row, phone, calendar, photos, camera.
Okay.
All out of folders.
So I would say, I did say I only folded on the second screen. I lied a little bit because I have Maps right next to it, Google Maps. Because to me, while Maps is good, Google Maps is better in some cases. So I keep them next to each other just because that's where, to me, Maps is always, it's up there. So like I either go up and hit Maps or I go up and hit Google Maps. Calendar, which I use a ton, but usually it's on other systems. And then I do have my first folder on my screen, which is weather, because I'm constantly using weather, but I love different apps. I don't like using one app. Sometimes I use Dark Skies. Sometimes I use Yahoo. Sometimes I use Storm. There's one. Or My Radar. So I love using different apps. So I kind of like go into there to find the different weather I want to go. All
okay.
Right, now go second row.
Second row has a folder called Music, which has Pandora, Apple
don't
Music.
Go into each one.
I won't even go in
crazy.
there. Next one's navigation. So this is like my maps stuff.
Yep.
Also, subway things are in there as well. So I'm sure we have a similar thing. Settings, it's just there.
Yep.
And one called business that I couldn't even tell you what's all in there because I'm all just searching. That's a folder I never touch. It's just stuff
in there.
And it just happens to be on the front page. Oh,
that's the phone.
That's
Should we see
my
who
phone.
it is?
Let's just let it ring. It'll
Okay.
just be in the background. Oh, it's
downstairs.
All right. Well, why don't you talk about your row of stuff, and I'll just let them. Oh, I can go ahead and pick it up. Sure.
This is why we don't have a studio. This is why we don't have a studio in in our offices because we get constantly updated. Now the dog will bark, so it's all good. This is like the most homey podcast ever. All right, so second row for me. There you go. It's not this. This is the audience participation. Yeah, that's a podcast. All right, so second row across, I have settings, iTunes, iTunes Store, but that would be like one of those things. So every once in a while, I'll go look and I'll be like, "Is there really something? Do I really need iTunes Store? How often do I go to iTunes Store anymore? Because I use music a ton. Wallet, which again, I don't really get to my wallet from my home screen, but it's there, and then App Store. So kind of the stuff at the top is that middle section is kind of just stuff that's there, but it's not the stuff I use the most. Third for you.
So this is where I start using stuff.
Okay.
So I have a SFDC folder.
Okay.
Which has a bunch of Salesforce apps in it.
Right.
A Google folder, which
Right.
has a bunch of Google apps in it.
Yep.
App Store, iTunes Store. That,
Okay.
again, is legacy. I don't think Apple is too keen on letting you, like, folder some of their apps.
Yeah, I think some of the things you couldn't. I think they changed that now.
Some of them you can. Like, I know you could take, like, Keynote and their spreadsheet app and their,
Right.
word processor and put them
Those,
together.
yeah. So that was your third row?
That's my third row, yeah.
Third for me, Safari.
Oh, okay.
Music, which now with Apple Music, I actually access more and more and more and more Apple Music. Clock, and that's just because when I want to set an alarm. Although funny enough, I probably use Siri to set alarms now. So
I use Siri more than to do that than anything else, and I have
else.
so many alarms for the same time. It's unbelievable.
That's
like
not
it doesn't
smart
handle
right?
it very
because it's just putting for one for the next day, not for permanent. And then lastly, good old friend of ours, Sense, the first I don't know if it was a Kickstarter. Was it a Kickstarter or something? So I have Sense as my first, and this is where I started to get into my theory that the things I have on my home screen kind of are drawing my attention. They're also things that are to remind me. So I put the Sense up there because it reminds me to check my sleep score. Like, oh, how did I sleep last night? So it kind of keeps it in front of my mind. And that's why I kind of went away from folders on the home screen, because I didn't want to. Folders really started to make things disappear. And so I wouldn't pay attention to them. So now the things that are on my kind of home screen, I just want in my face, kind of going like, hey, pay attention to me. So Sense is one of them.
All right. So
you're on 4.
I'm on row 4, and this is a big row for me. This is like a very...
How could you give more than 4?
Well, no, this is a row that I use quite a bit.
Okay.
Ergonomically, for some reason, this is a good place.
Oh, okay.
For this.
Well, for the phablets, it's probably like you finally get to it.
It's like a thumb level thing. So one's called productivity. This is where like my Omnifocus lives in Evernote. Right. One's called social. It has all the social apps in it: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. One called sports, just to get sports scores and stuff. All the different apps that I have for that. And then not in a folder is Google Authenticator.
Because you use it a lot.
Use it a ton.
Yeah, I have a common thing down there for that. Okay, so my 4, and these are ones that I kind of access a ton now. This is getting to stuff that I use a lot. Drive, Google Drive. We use it at Arkus and just constantly in it. Twitter, the tweeter. I moved from Tweetbot back to Twitter. Twitter's been actually getting much better as an app, even on the desktop. So if you want to pick, Twitter for Mac OS X is actually good now. I used to stink. Dropbox, which again couldn't live without it in my life, and then Evernote. So my second brain, Evernote. So those are kind of very high, powerful things on my home screen. Or that's 4 for me.
All right, 5 is finance. So these are all the bank apps and credit card apps and things like that. A folder of things that I can't say I've used in a while, just called Flick. I used to be very, very much into the Flick games, so all those games are in that one folder. I can't say I've opened that folder in a long time. Probably need to rethink that one. Weather and health.
So it's funny because we have the same, like all those. So on the second screen, I have a productivity app folder. I have a help app folder.
That's because it names it when you throw the things in there, and you just kind of say, yeah, sure, that works.
So my theory was just to bring one of anything that's important on home screen, leave everything else on the folder on the second screen. But okay. So we're on 5th. You just did 5th.
That was my 5th. So you're
now
on your 5th.
Now I'm into like stuff. Now here's a couple reasons. So I use Runkeeper. So I go running 2-3 times a week, so that needs to be on my home screen. Overcast, right? Listen to a lot of podcasts. Kindle. Now here's an interesting one. So Kindle that's a get me to think about it. So I struggle reading, or not struggle. I can read, but I struggle like keeping myself.
No, you don't. You can't.
Reading books is something that I don't read books because I read lots of stuff, and so So this is a way of saying, hey, remember, read a book. Hey, read a book. So I leave Kindle there, even though when I read on my Kindle Paperwhite, which I love. But by the way, I just started Game of Thrones, Fire and Ice, which you apparently stopped in the middle of.
Yeah.
Because you started like 7 months ago. It's not that long.
It's such a long book.
It's 829 pages.
That is a long book.
Yeah. And then lastly, Wemo. So Wemo is an app that is for controlling Wemo devices, and I have them all around my house that control all sorts of things. Yep. So I need them home screen because I'm constantly going to it to turn on and off lights. Like I can go right now.
So I have one Wemo. So Wemo's stuck in a folder somewhere, and when I need it, I just search Wemo. Hey, you just turned on the lights. All right, cool. Last row.
Oh, yeah, last row.
So bottom left, wallet.
Okay.
I have lots of stuff.
Do you go in that wallet that often? You go in often, like every day.
I wouldn't say every day, but like my favorite place to get coffee has their app.
But when you hold it, a wallet. It's a folder called Wallet?
No, it's called Wallet.
Yeah, I know. Wallet.
Yeah. Like the old passbook.
Okay, yeah. All right.
So, well, like to pay for things.
Right.
So like my favorite coffee place in the city where I go to get tea because I don't really drink coffee. But anyway, they
have their own app.
Well, they have their own app, but they have the add to wallet. So the little QR code that, like, if you were to go to, like, you know, if you have the Dunkin' Donuts thing or whatever, you can add it to your wallet.
I don't think you can add that stuff to your wallet. Well, you can? Dunkin' Donuts, you can add to your wallet?
I think you can, and I know that some of Level Up's apps, Gregory's Coffee, for example, you can add to your wallet. Chopped, you can't. So it's definitely a feature of whatever Level Up is giving you as their application. It's probably up to the individual store or franchise or whatever to say, yeah, I want to enable that feature on my app, because I like having it all in one place and not having to think about, oh, I'm eating here, let me go to that folder and open up that app, right?
Okay.
So I like having it in my wallet. We're flying today. I have my boarding pass in my wallet. Of course, it's going to pop up on my home screen as soon as we get to the airport, but that's neither here nor there.
Well, it is both here and there.
Right. Next to wallet is Slack. Use Slack a lot on my phone, so it's there outside of folder, individual on its own, because it's front and center. I then have an airlines folder full of just different airlines apps. Even though we primarily fly on one airline, I have flown on many, and I have, passenger numbers on all of them.
Just the other day, I moved a lot of things away from, because I realized I have not flown on another airline.
Well, I'm looking at it, and there's one in here, EasyJet, which was some thing to get me from Naples to Paris.
Right.
EasyJet. I don't even know where they operate. So I had the app because I was like, oh, I may as well have that.
Right.
Make my life easier, but I don't know if it helps me now. Anyway, and then the last one to the right is just called Food. And this is where those individual restaurant apps are. Seamless is in there as well. And I make sure with that one in particular, it's bottom right, it's easy to get to, and I use Seamless a lot. So Seamless is on the first page within the folder, easy to get to, as opposed to being its own thing. If I thought about it, I should probably move to your model of just taking them. I'm sure that, I could take the most important things and just put them right up front, and then just move the rest of the folders, because I do tend to use search to get to things most of the time anyway. So that is a good way to do it.
Thanks.
So I
something I did recently.
That.
It's probably 2 months ago. I was kind of thinking about it. I was I want.
Yeah, that homepage, just having one app to click is definitely better than having these. You'll see it's scattered full of one app and folder, and it's just a little.
I realized that folders were burying things, and it's I wanted to bring things to my attention and keep them out. So my last row, most important row, second, I guess, most important row.
I think the doc is the most important.
Yeah,
it sticks with you wherever you are, and it's right there at the bottom.
So I do Arkus, so that the activity tracking app I still use. I use because there's better reporting than the Apple Watch or activity one. There's a couple things I like about it, so I still use it and like it a lot, actually, Argus. And then right next to it, activity. Which is funny. I don't use the app so much. I use it on the Apple Watch. I look at the Apple Watch to see my activity. I don't really look at this, but sometimes I go in. I like the achievements and stuff like that. See if I got some special achievements. That's fun. 1Password, which I'm sure I've made as a pick of the week already, which is now they can support.
That's your authenticator.
That's my authenticator, and passwords, and auto log into systems. I'm finding stuff there's stuff all the time that I'm finding that 1Password can do. It's one of those Merlin Mannisms. I think he talked about Evernote 2 years before I used it. Once I used it, I was like, oh my God, why did I wait so long? And this is one of those things. He's been talking about 1Password for years, and I was like, eh. But once it got the time-based token one, I've fallen for it. And then lastly Slack. So Slack makes it onto my home screen. And I would say pretty much the second most important. I mean, kind of right above Omnifocus, so that's pretty good. But yeah, it's really based on frequency of use. Although I'm now looking at certain things, and I'm like, clock. I don't really go into clock. Certainly not daily because
I never go into clock, especially now that I have the watch. So like to set a timer,
right.
My watch face has the
right.
timer thing on it. So I just set a timer, and I actually prefer that because it's like buzzing my wrist instead of maybe my phone's over in the other room and I forgot that I set that timer and I don't hear it. So clock to me is a Siri thing.
Clock might move unless it's something that can't be folded, but it might move off because I could see, even though it's at the top, but that's one of those things I could certainly see being, I don't use that totally, whatever. I will say a couple of things just because we talked about the iPad. I try to mirror my iPad because good navigation and finding something is about knowing where it is. And if I look at my iPad, I want it to be relatively the same. So if you look, even though the numbers and rows are different, there's nothing more. But if you looked at my iPad, there's a slight differences, but it's basically the same. Slack's in the right corner. OmniFocus is right there. So when I move from device to device, there's not a moment of, oh, I'm on a different device, that's somewhere else. It's always, no, it's always there. Maps are up in the right-hand corner. So I kind of try to keep the same theory from one to one. It really just makes when I pick up one device or another, I'm not having to think about where to go. If I had 7 devices, I had 7 iPads, I'd have them all be the same just because it just makes it, again, it's good design is to have because spatially you know where to go. It's not even like to look. It's like spatially you just know it's right there underneath that thumb. So one of my theories. Yes, you were going to say something? You picked up your mic. You're trying to get my dog from
I'm trying to get the dog to stop messing around.
Hi, buddy.
I don't do that with the iPad. I mean...
One to grow on.
Well, I actually use far less apps on my iPad than I do on my iPhone. I know that
probably.
as an absolute fact.
Because you only use...
on my iPad, I probably use 6 apps. Madden, Mail, Safari, Facebook, Twitter, Slack. That might be it.
Right.
In all seriousness.
Yeah. Well...
Calendar,
right. I know. Well, Hulu. No, you don't watch movies?
I don't watch Netflix and Hulu unless I'm away. So I don't really use them I'm talking on an everyday basis.
Right.
Maybe 5 or 6 apps on
definitely have more
iPad.
On the iPad. I have is it a bigger? Are our iPads bigger? I think they are. I think they're 128s. So I know I have more stuff. I have games that I don't.
Yeah, my iPad's a 64.
So I have games that I don't play. I just don't play on my iPhone. I don't play Infinity Blade but I don't even play any of these games. I only play Madden. But I don't play any other game sort of other than little tiny games the little stupid games just 5-second games. Everything else is on my iPad. So iPad has more folders and stuff, but it does have a bigger real estate, so it kind of works that way. But yeah, I just keep things the same. Just makes it so when I go to one or the other, it's just exactly the same. I don't have to worry about it. All right. Well, I hope that was the most fascinating, other than my dog being here and the phone ringing.
The phone was certainly fascinating.
Want to hear him bark? Murray. Oh, 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 oh.
Super intimidating. This is riveting. All right. For those that are still listening.
All right. Now I've got him all worked up. Come here. All right. Stop it. All right. Well,
this is great.
The office manager.
Perfect way to end this one.
Perfect way to end it. So we'll be back next week. We'll be back to more Salesforce-y fun things. We'll go deep into spring, and we'll do that. But thought we'd do a weird episode out there, a very special episode. Until then, we will, as always, this is Justin and Jason and Murray saying enjoy those cloudy days.